So your next assessment task is in the topic individual in the law. It's due the 13th of May. That's week 6. Sorry, the date given was last term. Okay, that was given in week 6. But it's due week 4, B week, 13th of May, in class period. There are 2 components to this assessment task. Okay, part A is that you research one contemporary issue from this list. Okay, and I'll give you a bit of direction about what one of the really good ones are. These are all just straight from the syllabus. Some are easier to research than others because some have had more reform than others. Make sense? Okay, so I don't care which one you choose, but I would give you some advice. Choose the ones that have more reform. Okay, because then you won't be able to answer the essay question part B if you don't have proper legal examples. Okay? So, through these examples, misuse of interactive technologies, okay, that's pretty much being illegal using technology. Okay? So, people with, smartphones on the beach, okay, misuse of interactive technologies, that kind of thing. But you really want to look at legislation that's been made in these areas, okay? So not every single one will have really strong legislation. In legal studies, we have to provide strong legal examples, and I'll get to that, and that's at the bottom of this page. If I was to look at any of these that's been over the last 12 months, privacy issues in relation to metadata, okay? There have been Commonwealth reforms for metadata. That's a really good one. Okay, I can see some people are happy already. Cyberbullying, yes, there's been legislation reform, but that has been in place for a number of years. You'd have to go back and have a look at that, okay? These are a bit general. Genetic profiling in cyberspace. You would have to look at some, connecting legislation there. Security and surveillance, you could then look into CCTV, okay? In New South Wales criminal law, you could look at all that in crime if you'd like. Privacy issues, you could also look at the rise of things like Google data and Google Maps, and is that being legislated or not? Are there issues in there? Okay. Mobile phones, obviously, you could find a lot of legislation on that and a lot of cases for that as well. Copyright, obviously, copyright would be big. Okay, and you could look at international law, Commonwealth law, New South Wales law there. And the 3 different steps there is that there's international law on intellectual property, there's Commonwealth laws on what you can and cannot do as far as copyright law, and then New South Wales law would look at it largely as a criminal law matter. I really would like you to try and get different layers in there if you can for that issue, because then that shows to the marker that you've got a wide variety of knowledge about what you're using, okay? So, as we come down here, this is the really important part for part A. Present your work using the following headings, 4 headings, okay? You've got an 850 word limit, okay? So, the thing that you have to do, and this is a really good tip in legal studies writing, is be succinct, okay? Be to the point, direct, don't waver on or just waffle on in your paragraphs about nothing or just copying and pasting the legislation. I don't want to hear that. You've got to get really direct with your writing, okay? And I'm going to teach you boys how to do it over time anyway. Impacts of technology on the individual. Obviously, you're talking about individual rights, okay? How have there been changes to the individual using technology? Okay, if you're doing privacy, that's a big one there for individual rights, okay? Legal implications, okay, what arises from legislation because technology is always ahead of the legislation. Okay, we say that the law is limping behind when it comes to technology issues. Because what happens is the technology is produced and then our governments or our legal bodies look at it and go, oh, we need a law there because it's hurting people, or people are losing money from their bank accounts. Oh, hang on, we need a law in there, something like that. Or someone's losing their intellectual property. Oh, we need a law there, okay? So you need to focus on that one as your second subheading, okay? Your third heading, difficulties with enforcing rights. The big one with technology and the internet is that it's borderless, okay? What I mean by that is having a look at that. There could be someone in an overseas country breaking the law and it affects the rights of Australians. Now, how do you enforce that law? The New South Wales police can't go to a country in the Middle East and go, you're in trouble. Okay, it's very difficult to enforce, borderless. Okay, it's also very hard to track down some people on the internet and using these technologies because people can put in aliases and all that stuff as well. So try and bring in some cases there if you can. Okay. The fourth one there is the future directions, the role of law reform. This one, you have to look at where areas may need to be reformed in the legislation in the future. Okay? This is a big area that you need to focus on here because this is going to help you for Part B. All right? Now, when we have a look at this section, the most important one that I want you to focus on first is legislation. Legislation is the primary concern, first of all. Okay? You focus on your legislation, and then you can break down with the other categories, okay? And the other categories are, well, you've got to integrate statistics, documents, expert opinions are sort of together, okay? Because an expert opinion could be a legal document that a professor has written, or someone in the government department's written, or Attorney General's report, okay? They're pretty much together, that area is a really strong way to produce great legal writing. Okay, obviously treaties, cases, you need to integrate media reports, news articles, something that gives rise and focus on your issue, but don't flood your writing with 20 media reports. Okay, it's really unwise. And when we get to essays, you don't do that either. As soon as I start reading someone's essay that's got 10, should be looking at 3 to 4 in a really strong essay of news articles or integration that way. Okay? Some people get in this trap, you have to give as many news articles. Okay? It's getting the balance between all these legal examples that is important. Okay? That's the big thing that we need to do. Don't just focus on the legislation. That's the first one to look at, but try and get a variety of these in your writing. Okay, because that then shows to me that you're not just learning one thing, you're learning all those examples. Okay? All right. Include a bibliography. Put this in, a plastic sleeve for collection on the date. Okay? And then Part B is the extended response. Okay? Now, before we do this extended response in class, I'm going to show you, a couple of years ago I sat down with an English teacher and we sort of talked about essay structure, and I came up with my own structure for legal studies writing. I'm going to teach you boys that before this assessment, okay, to help you improve your writing, and that's the same structure that I use all the way to the HSC. Okay, it's not on this sheet obviously, but I'm going to give you that information. I'm going to show you a couple of techniques along the way. Okay, this task consists of extended response for 15 marks. All right, so out of 15, up to the HSC, we move that mark to 25. Okay, that's the standard for the big essays in HSC. But in the HSC crime question, it's 15 marks as well. Okay, so it's like a mini essay kind of thing. All right, you will be given 50 minutes. Okay, in class on that date. Okay, you may bring 1 page of typed notes in. Okay, now what I'm going to train you with that type notes is not just huge information, but an essay plan. Okay, and you can look at that essay plan as you write your essay. That's what you need to focus on, because you need a plan to then address how you're going to write for that 50 minutes. Okay, it's going to be based on, in the 21st century, emerging technologies can pose a significant threat to individual rights. The focus is going to be on law reform, and we're going to start that topic today. Okay, so I'm going to teach you what you need to sort of integrate into your writing for this area of technology. And it's focusing on enforcing individual rights. Okay, so that's all coming up, but then you have to apply that to this next assessment. This here is essentially what is given at the start of any essay in legal studies. The 4 main things that you need to focus on. Demonstrate an understanding of relevant legal information. There's your legal examples, okay? So that's a really important thing to focus on there. You need to have a bit of variety there, as I said. Okay, don't just focus on the legislation, but the legislation should really be the way that you can structure your paper. Okay, don't just rely on one legislation. Look at the 2 or 3 that's involved in your issue. Okay, communicate using legal terminology. Obviously, you need to use legal terms as you're writing a legal paper, and this is the most important one: sustained, logical, and my favourite word in essay planning and writing, structure. It needs to be a structured response. You can't just write from the top of the page to 4 pages in, it's just all in one hit. You have to have intro, body, conclusion, and I'm going to go through that and really strengthen you up in that area. Okay? That's all the usual stuff that you'll see for an assessment task. Are there any questions at this point in time? No? Great.